Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Well, we got some statements coming from Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, informing us that the Ukrainians and Russians are in continuous negotiation, and he points out some issues that could not be, or they are negotiating upon or on, and certain things that are not negotiable. Non-negotiable would be, for instance, denazification of Ukraine or the Donbass, Lugansk regions, and negotiations are also on sanctions. So here we have an article from more than one source, but I'm going to start with Reuters. And Lavrov states, this is from April 29th, 2022, lifting sanctions against Russia part of peace talks with Ukraine. So lifting sanctions imposed on Russia is part of peace negotiations between Moscow and Ukraine, which are difficult but continue daily, he stated, and his remarks were published early on Saturday. So he says, at present, the Russian and Ukrainian delegations are actually discussing on a daily basis via video conferencing a draft of a possible treaty, Lavrov said. In comments to China's official news agency, blah, blah, blah. The talks agenda also includes, among others, the issue of denazification, the recognition of new geopolitical realities, the lifting of sanctions, the status of the Russian language, Lavrov said without elaborating. We are in favor of continuing the negotiations, although they are difficult, Lavrov said. It says also Lavrov stated that he advises the West to come to terms with the new geopolitical realities. Well, they will not. What are you going to do about it? So it says here that he advised the West to come to terms with the new geopolitical realities, adding that it will be for itself and the international community. He also slammed Washington, claiming that arbiters of the fate. He also slammed Washington, calling them arbiters of the fate of mankind, and said the U.S. aims to impose an American-centric model of the world order and has come to a point where Western minority is trying to replace the UN-centric architecture and international law formed after the Second World War with their own rule-based order, Lavrov said, as quoted by The Guardian. He also, Lavrov also claimed that Moldova is being dragged into NATO. Well, so he said on Saturday that Moscow believes Moldova, that little 3.5 million population country, is being dragged into NATO, and it is not in favor of the country's security. You know what that means, right? And I'm quoting, they have to worry about their future because they are being dragged into NATO, and I don't think that would add security to Moldova. Well, now we have some claims here regarding last night targets that were hit by the Russian military. According to republicworld.com, the previous comments made by Lavrov come from the same source. And he says, according to the Russian news agency, Russia's defense ministry has claimed that its artillery units had hit 389 Ukrainian targets overnight. The figure, as per the report, includes 35 control points. I wonder how many German, English, and French speakers were also hit by those artillery shells from those control points. It says here that it also hit 15 arms and ammunition depots and several areas where Ukrainian troops and equipment were concentrated. Okay, we had I posted another article a minute ago where the Ukrainian officials claimed that Russia used about 1,300 missiles since the beginning of the hostilities. And I have another article that I discussed regarding Zelensky's claim that Russia already, I don't know how he knows, but nevertheless, Russia already used most of its rockets since the start of the war, and but still more remain. So if we get to 1,300, as I stated in the previous video, with being a majority, I put it to 90% usage. That means they have about what, 150 more. So I said, well, let's say they total 1,500. So that means if they used 1,300 missiles in 2 months, I made a, an average, a rough calculation of the 50 more missiles that the Russians have be gone by May 15th, 2022. In the meantime, the Russians will build like 1 or 2 more with their industry. So then by mid-May, no more rockets unless they use the big ones, you know what I mean? The big ones. So here it is. Lavrov claims that the Russians and the Ukrainians are still communicating and they're negotiating via video conference. There are some, the first, I mean, obviously, or the first time when I hear that the Russians are saying that on the treaty, whatever that treaty will be like, or whatever its name will bear, whatever name it will be given to that treaty, it's the first time when I hear that the Russians want sanctions to be lifted. I think that's a dream never come true from the Russians. I don't think the sanctions will ever be lifted by the club, even if Putin goes away somewhere, or the Russian leadership, I don't know, disintegrates, or however it disappears. Russia will not get off those sanctions unless they just gonna get a, I don't know, an American president, or maybe a Jewish president as Zelensky on the Russian throne, and they will have over there total control over Russia. Then of course the sanctions will be lifted because they don't want to sanction themselves, as they're doing right now with their embargoes and their sanctions on Russia. I'm talking about Europeans, not necessarily Americans. Americans are benefiting, profiting out of this war more than anybody else on the whole issue. Um, well, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just. See you in a moment.